Hello, Internet. Right, I'm here today with Anthony Davis from. What's the name of your business, Anthony? I want to make sure I get it right.
Headstuff.
Headstuff. So I'm here with Anthony from Headstuff. Anthony's got a whole host of knowledge around, from what I understand, bidding for work in the public sector, which I know a lot of us would be interested or could be interested in. And I know he's been really quite active in that area, and I think there's a lot of stuff in his head that I'm trying to prize out. I saw a video that Anthony did with some people who you may know, Dave Kibbe. It's an hour long. I'm happy to post a link to that. And I watched that yesterday, and it was really, really good. And I've been someone who has really developed my skills around creating private clients and growing my business in that way, but I've not really gone down into the public sector route for whatever reason. And I saw the video, and I know Anthony and I have had conversations in the past, and I just thought, oh, I've got a load of questions for Anthony that I would love to ask and get into a bit more detail on. And then we just thought actually it'd be a great conversation for us to record, because I think this could be really, really helpful for a number of you guys out there. So that's what we're planning on doing. Anthony's very kindly offered to kind of donate his time, if you like, and be recorded for this. So thanks, Anthony.
You're welcome.
So I guess before we start, just so that we know, or for the guys know a little bit more about you who don't, can you kind of give us a little bit of your background in terms of what you've done? Because I believe you've been on both sides of the fence as someone who's been assessing tenders and also bidding for work and been successful in both.
Yeah, I've kind of gone from gamekeeper to poacher, kind of working with local and regional government for about 12, 15 years, and then kind of putting what they call framework documents, basically tender, so like tendering work and say, we've got this problem, is there somebody out there who can solve it? To going on to the other side of actually, I ran a marketing and business development company where in the space of a couple of years, we went from zero to about £400,000 a year turnover based on pitching for contracts. So again, it was like somebody in the public sector has a problem, they want it solved. Yeah, here's a proposal to actually solve it and make it go away. So it's no different from the very simple business model: find a problem, make it go away.
Okay.
And kind of background wise, I've been involved in putting programs together for 25 years. My total is about 50 million through various ways, not just putting proposals together, but actually changing policies, influencing that kind of thing. So government shifts money around into areas that they now know they can solve, whereas previously they thought they couldn't solve it, but now you kind of steer things through. So there's a kind of an influencing thing going on. My success rate is about 80%, so about 4 out of 5 proposals I put together and pitch get funded. And when I talk about funding, it's not about what people would think was a grant. It's actually just a contract. It's just somebody's got a problem, we want some coaching, or we want some mentoring, or we want some training, or we want some business solutions. Is there anybody out there who can provide this service to us that we just want to contract? So it's sometimes called funding, but it's just contract. It's money available, like any other thing. And the public sector in the UK, it's about £250 billion a year.
Right. And I know we're talking about the UK, but I saw a post from you online that although we're talking about the UK, and I will dive into specifics on this call,
Yeah.
I believe you're saying that a lot of what we're going to be talking about is going to be equally applicable or useful for people, for folks in the US.
The US, Europe, they're pretty much organized. I mean, the procurement legislation, is European wide. It's European directives that say you have to put this out to organizations, you have to contract stuff out, you have to get the best value for this. And so it's the same across Europe. And it's the same across other organizations. So some that it might sound specific to the UK, but if you take a step back and go, it's probably true in your own country that, things are published, specifications are published. You just got to track down where they're actually published from. and then sign up, and they'll turn up into your inbox every day.
Okay. Cool. And just again, so people know that, because I guess for me, one thing is that there's so many people out there at the moment, which are people from the Three Principles community, people not from the Three Principles community, people who've got programs, people are trying to coach, people are trying to pitch. What do you do? Do you work with people to help them get through this proposal? Do you collaborate? Do you just offer advice? Do you do all of the above?
I do a bit of all of the above. So some people, if just wants a piece of advice, that's easy, simple to do, to give. Sometimes it's, can you give me a help in actually making sense of the specification and actually creating a proposal? And I say, well, if you write it, I'll edit it and tweak it so it puts across in the best light and in the language that they're looking to hear. And very tiny little things like, for example, write in the present tense. People write stuff as if it's going to happen, or if you write in the present tense, it makes it real. So the person reading it can get a real flavor of as if it was happening. The proposal you're doing, it's not some point in the future that may or may not happen. It's now as if it is happening, and that shift makes a big difference in trying to communicate what it is you want to get across to somebody. But yeah, I've worked with sometimes large. I've put kind of multi-partnership projects together. I think I did one a few years ago, and we had 65 partners, and we put it together in about 6 weeks, because everybody came together and go, yep, this is what we want to do. So
Okay. So a lot of experience, and you've got a lot of things that you can help people out with, and so have you recently worked with Three Principles practitioners to help them get funding for projects?
I have, but the funny thing is that they get to a point and then they talk themselves out of it. Even one, I said, look, I've got some personal contacts in this particular area, so I have a track record and a reputation with them. Very easily, for the thing you want to do, it would only take a couple of emails and phone calls, and I probably could get you a £20,000 to £30,000 contract to do this particular work.
Yeah.
And then it's a problem that's occurring across the whole of the UK. So once piloted in your home area, you could roll it across the UK. And they went, great, that sounds great. I'll think of it over the weekend. Never heard anything since.
Right.
And it's like, it was to the point of, this is so good, this is so brilliant, this will make such a big impact of a problem which is the police are having. You've got a great background in this. Put the two together. This is something, sharing the principles. This is something within the space of about 18 months could go nationwide. But we went, no. But I was talking to somebody this morning about, it's kind of principles based. It's to do with educational attainment of children. But they, it's not, as it were, you're not selling the principles. You're actually selling what's the problem.
You're selling a solution.
You're selling the solution of which the principles will just come through anyway.
Yeah.
So don't try and sell the principles, because it just won't connect with somebody, because they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You can talk about the differences that it makes, the
results,
the results, the results that you can offer as a consequence of your particular approach. Because I see it as traditional approaches are kind of reverse engineering, because they're mostly around behavioral change. Somebody has some behavior and it's wanted to change, whether it's a private sector organization wanted to do reorganization, reorientate themselves. It's all pretty much around behavioral change. We don't like the behavior they do at the moment, so let's do something to change it. And the back to frontedness of that is, it's based on people in a good kind of frame of mind, will do good things as a consequence of that. So what pretty much all training is and interventions are based on. We've noticed that really great people do this great stuff.
So
if we provide opportunities or train people in the good stuff that they're doing, we can kind of reverse engineer it with the results that they get.
Yeah. Yeah.
but kind of coming around, as it were, with the principles and go, okay, the most important thing is actually the state of mind, or the frame of mind that the person's is in, that all that stuff flows as a consequence. So it's great that you have all these training packages, but you'll marry them up better if they come from a place that they go, well, that's useful, I can take that on board, I can customize it, I can play with it. Okay. So there's no reverse engineering going on, because it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think to a large extent that's also true for anyone listening to this who wants private clients as well, as bidding for public work. If you don't know about the three principles, you don't walk around going, oh, I wish I could find a three principles coach to teach me about the three principles, because you don't know
it exists.
You don't know it exists. And I remember for myself, before I came across this community, and I was very much into the kind of self-development world. I was someone who'd paid for courses and books and audio programs and all the rest of it. I was looking for, there's a program on confidence. Oh, yeah, I'd be interested in that. Or I'm looking for something around, I don't know, if there's a program on massively improve your self-esteem, or feel happier, or whatever else. And that's interestingly what sells. And like you say, actually having a better understanding of the three principles gives you all of those things anyway.
I something that touched upon. I've written a kind of guide to funding. It's a free book. It's about 17, 18 pages long. It's called the Inside Out Guide to Funding. But it's and a lot of what I talk about is in there. And I was talking to somebody this morning about this, and they said, we're a small organization, we don't have a particular track record. And I said, well, all that kind of stuff, if it's going on your head, that'll come through in the application.
Yeah.
Now, there's a competitive advantage in this, because if you think, well, there's a bunch of people pitching in for this contract, and it could be one person, it could be five, it could be whatever. They tend to chase the money. So if that's kind of uppermost in their minds, that'll come through in the application, and it jumps out when I read it. And you must have seen this from your procurement head. It comes out, the kind of all that insecure thinking, and unintentionally just comes out in the proposal, in the writing. The stuff is like, well, I won't draw attention to this particular thing. For example, I won't draw attention to we're a small organization. I won't draw attention to we've 6 months.
Yeah.
It's like, then you start to write about it. You point towards it rather than just stick it there and go, they can make what it is of it, in a factual way. It's you suddenly inadvertently, innocently, you just start to draw attention to the, well, I won't talk about that. I won't draw. Oh God, I've done it again.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Actually, just reminding me, I think a lot of people will know me from what I post online, but what maybe a lot of people don't realize is that I spent, since 2007 up until December last year, so 7 years in procurement of services, interesting enough. And whilst I didn't work in the public sector, I was working in the private sector. I've been also one of the guys who's been pulling together these tender documents, sending them out to companies of various sizes. And whilst I worked for kind of a multinational for several years, and then a kind of was it one of the top five biggest companies in the world after that. That I dealt with companies of various sizes. So hopefully that will add some interesting conversation here in terms of what are the similarities, what are the differences, and perhaps we can share some of that.
That makes me think. Because a lot of people think that we're talking about large sums of money being involved. Yeah. It's a tender for a large sum of money. But changes of government, and they kind of like, we want better value for money. And one of the ways to do that, we're looking for more innovative solutions. And they realize that those no longer come from corporate larger organizations. They come from very small, nimble organizations. And so they break down contracts accordingly. Yeah. To encourage those people. I mean, in the public sector, they're actually, the NHS spends anything up to £100 million a year funding organisations to become capable of pitching for NHS contracts. The Ministry of Justice puts in, they had a fund of about 126 million, I think it was,
Mm.
to go into, and I know some people in the three principal community who've actually got some of that money to help them build their organization capacity, capabilities, track record, credibility, so that they can then pitch for Ministry of Justice contracts, because they're saying, we know innovation will come from these smaller, even individuals. What can we do to encourage that and bring it into the public, private, the not-for-profit sector? So I'm including housing associations as well as that, as the police forces, as well, the NHS, local authorities, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, you're right. Actually, it's made me have a think that when I used to work for the company that I worked for 5 or 6 years, of those 7, we spent as an organisation £750 million with suppliers, and the services side of was about 250 million of that, and my personal section was 50 million, but within that 50 million, I had probably my biggest supplier I spent kind of 5, 6, 7 million with, but then I had suppliers we were spending, not strategic suppliers, but we still had suppliers we were spending hundreds of pounds with, and even suppliers that we had a close relationship with. You're right, they weren't necessarily huge multinationals. Some of them were, but it just varied by sector, and some of them, like you say, were smaller, more boutique companies, and public sector, private sector. The world is changing, and people don't want the same old. They want something new. They want something different. And you're right. I think it's more about what you have, and presenting that in a way that fits what the person's need is. I remember when I was a procurement person, one of the pet peeves that I had was people just not reading the specification and just saying, "Well, we don't care what you've written. We don't care that you've wanted X, Y, Z. We're just going to give you this, which is our standard offering," and there was nothing to that. And what I'm really curious to hear from you, I know we kind of messaged about this, is what I used to like in my, and everyone works, I guess, slightly differently, but I used to really value companies who, when I was putting out a tender document, would ask me questions and were really, really keen to know what I wanted. So, okay, you've written this in the document, are you looking for this? Are you looking at that? This is what we've seen. Are you going to, more go this way or that way? And I know different procurement people, even with the organisation I worked in, have different ways of working. But I just simply liked that kind of enthusiasm to really, not in terms of, I didn't like it when people said, "Tell us what to write down so we get the tender, so we get the work," because we're like, well, you've got to bid for it. But I was really impressed by people who said, "You know what, we really want to do a good job for you. We're bidding for this work, and we want to make sure we really get it right." And they would ask very, very sensible, detailed, specific questions around what we're putting out to work. And I'm just curious, in your experience, has that been in the same in the public sector? Do they tend to be open to that, or is it very much a closed process, faceless, and you've just got to put the bid in?
No, it's interaction is kind of encouraged, because if there is, whatever the best specification in the world is, there will be still some stuff which you've overlooked or whatever, it's not clear or whatever. The kind of points of clarification, they're always welcome. It kind of made me think, because what I'm talking about is what I describe as ready-made clients. They have a problem, they clearly know what it is, they just want somebody to come up with the solution is and whose name to put on the check. Now, the counter to that for the kind of the one-to-one coaching world creating is the creating clients, which is based around having conversations. So how do you have a conversation, as it were, to somebody you've never met? How do you form that relationship? And I think your point about asking questions is a great way to do that. It then connects you with the person who's going to do the assessment, and because it's done electronically, you can post a question. In the interest of fairness, the answer that you give, the question that you've asked and the answer that's given is then shared amongst other people who've registered for it. So your message, as it were, goes to the other people who've registered. So it might go out to 5 people, or it might go out to 20 people. You never know. So you can get those points of clarification, but I don't know. It did occur to me. I have a slightly mischievous head on every now and
Mm.
again. With the principles is um, we tend to get really good results. You know, we're not talking about a 2% or a 5%
Mm.
improvement. Um, you know, reducing reoffending rates. I saw a contract that exceptional performance, I mean, truly exceptional, out of this world performance was 7%.
Mm.
If you can reduce reoffending rates by 7%, you are truly magnificent,
Yeah.
amazing. That's exceptional. Now we tend to be in the realm. I'm tend to work in the realm of about 400% improvements. That's the kind of
Mm.
magnitude that I the work I do. Now, it did occur to me, and I haven't done this, is that you could post a question that says, okay, you're looking for a 10% improvement in this area. Um, we don't work in that area. We work in the level of 50 to 60% improvement. Would that cause a problem for you?
Mm.
Now, imagine, oh goodness,
So this
sorry,
just
turn
shows
off.
this is a live recording and we will not be editing anything out of this. This is not scripted. Just in case we're just breaking the illusion there. Yeah.
And it did occur to me because that sends a message to the person who's put the tender out and who's going to do the assessment, because it says, wow, I didn't know that that was available, that was
Mm.
possible. So you kind of preempt it to say, wow, I'm expecting an application. I'd love to know what it is that they do. So you kind of create curiosity in
Mm.
the person, and a kind of openness to go, that might be slightly different because
Mm.
we in our realm, doing a 10% improvement is just out of this world.
Yeah.
There's somebody who's just put it here and shared on, as it were, in
Mm.
the frequently asked questions is we don't work at that level. We're used to kind of 50, 60% improvements. Does that actually cause a problem for you?
Yeah.
And also the other people who are reading it, who probably do a traditional intervention type approach, go, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Because they say they're normally in the realm
Mm.
of 50 to 60%. We're in the 10% people. We
Mm.
thought we'd stand a good chance.
Yeah.
That what would play on the state of mind of those people go, well, hang on a minute,
Mm.
you know, we're not used to this 50 to 60%, but they
Mm.
seem to be stating it publicly that's the order of magnitude that they work at.
Mm.
Um, and so it kind of opens things up. So it kind of creates a little bit of a conversation, even though it's electronic and is actually anonymous.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah,
And is there anything else? I found that kind of when I was, I guess, on the other side, and I was procuring, you know, a service in a certain area because I worked in a number of different areas. I tended to get pretty good at asking, you know, the key questions, the key things that I was looking at from a procurement point of view in a meeting. Now, I guess what I'm really curious about is from your side. Okay, I know there's lots of different types of services that are requested, but if you were picking up, you know, a generic tender document, what would you want to know? What are the key things you look for? And I know you mentioned some of these on the interview with Dave Kibbe. So you're kind of looking at what's the overall budget, what do they want from that. But are there any other key things you would pick up as a first glance? Top 5, 6, 10 things you'd want to know to decide whether you're going to bid for a piece of work or what's important to them. What would you look for?
um, I think that the first one I would be looking for is how open are they for the solution. So sometimes it'll be very specific what it is the requesting. For example, I've seen stuff on, say, occupational health service. We contract out occupational health coaching, mentoring would be a great way of doing that. Um, but they'll then go, actually, we want trained certified counsellors to this particular level. It's like, okay, they just want a certified counsellor. They're not looking for something innovative or different.
Mm,
It's like they think, oh, we just need to tick this box. We get a counsellor in, that's
mm.
it. Okay. Um, that wouldn't fit. That's kind of closed off mindedness. Other things, the
Can I just
budgets.
can I just pause you there?
Yep.
Would it be okay? Because again, I've had this on the other side where you could express an interest for that tender. You could on this open platform ask a question saying, "Would you be open to more innovative solutions?"
Yep.
And if they said no, you can then just take yourself out of the running without spending hours and hours producing a
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, that would be another way. Yeah, would you be open to other ways? Because you've got this
Mm.
problem,
Yeah.
we can deal with it, but your specification demands this particular qualification. It tends to be exceptional rather than the norm.
Yeah.
Um, you know, as somebody said recently on Facebook, there's no entrance qualifications to be a coach.
Yeah.
Although some people, there are certified courses
Mm.
around, but that doesn't necessarily make them a brilliant a coach just because they're
Yeah.
certified. When I did my MBA, I met a bunch of people who were just doing it for academic purposes. They were not. They would still have an MBA. They'd have 3 letters after their name, but it hadn't changed or
Yeah.
anything that they did at work.
Mm.
So what other things I'd be looking for? Yeah, the kind of openness of the specification. I tend to look for like strategic stuff. Okay, what's the background to this? Because I have a curiosity. Because if they've got a problem and they're putting this out to tender, that means that there could be potentially hundreds of other people with the same problem. If it's a legislative thing, it's not a nice to have; it's a must have. Okay,
Right.
so sometimes I go, okay, there seems to be a trend. I've seen three tenders out for this. Like, well, for example, well-being. Well-being is now enshrined in the Care Act. It's a duty of local authorities. They have to do something with it over the next 12 months. So there are increasing numbers of well-being based contracts coming out there.
So again, could you just give us an example? What do you mean by well-being based contracts by local
Okay,
authorities?
okay. Um, so yeah, like children's services are putting
Mm.
out, so they deal with from preschool through to 18, 19, and sometimes through till 25 if it's
Mm.
special needs. So they have a duty to look after the care and well-being, to give those children the best opportunities in life. And so
Right.
it's encapsulated under well-being. So they're looking for programs or coaches or counselors or mentors or trainers, or they use the terms interchangeably. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for the word coach, you'll won't find it in a tender document line.
Yeah.
They'll say we want somebody to provide this service, so it's
Mm.
to provide the well-being service, and then sometimes there'll be a bit more detail into what, so you can go, with a coaching approach or our kind of approach, we
Yeah.
run some workshops, or that's
Mm.
facilitation workshops, this is what we can do.
Right.
Does
And
that make sense?
yeah, no, absolutely. So this is kind of what the level of detail I was quite curious of getting into, and hopefully will be helpful for other people listening. So let's say, and we'll take that example, that someone needs well-being services.
Mm.
Do you get a range of things? So do you tend to get people saying, right, we want a well-being service, and then it's open to you to how you provide that, and they'll just give you a budget, right the way through to, no, we want you to deliver 5 workshops to this many people, as well as one-on-one executive coaching, as well as something.
I've seen both.
Right.
I've seen sometimes there was Sports England put a contract out last year for, they wanted people to train people to be coaches through their elite all the way through to their kind of introductory coaches. And they said for that, this is the time frame. It's 18 months.
Mm.
We want to deliver so many workshops at this particular level with follow-on sessions. It was that specific. Can you give
Right.
us a price? It makes easy pricing it up because you've
Mm.
got a pricing schedule. You can then fill in the details.
Mm.
Sometimes it's open at the other end because they themselves don't quite know what well-being is.
Right.
So they might refer to the Sterling well-being scale.
Mm.
Okay, so you can then look up Sterling well. Okay, so now they're using that as a reference.
Right.
So you can then pick out of that how the Sterling University came up measuring well-being. Oh, okay, so this is the list of criteria they're looking at, and they'll say this is the improvement in outcomes we would like.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, so I can have a little bit of their language, their understanding, and then put a proposal together. Say, well, actually, we'll do facilitation workshops.
Okay.
If you provide the venues, they provide the audience because they've already got the children there. Okay, this is what we'll provide, a series of workshops. And when it comes to pricing up the proposal, it's easy to you've got the details to actually then start to price it up. So you kind of break it down in bite-sized chunks as much as they do.
I'm guessing as well. maybe this is just the way my mind works to kind of shortcut things, is if you don't know how to do the first piece, if you've got something totally open, if you look for similar kind of tenders and you find one that's a bit more structured, I'm guessing that gives you some kind of indication of how you can structure a program.
They tend to be the same. Um, and it was funny because about 15 years ago, I pitched my first, as it were, public sector coaching contract. I kind of pioneered business coaching in the public sector because I was sat at home pitching for some work on behalf of a client, and in the range of stuff they were looking for, there was a line there that said, we want to improve the success of startup businesses. Now the thing is, I had a coach at the time, kind of a life coach, and I was like, I don't know how to write a program for this. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I've got a coach. Oh, and we have a structured program. I'll just do the same.
Right.
So I took I took the program that I was on. It was 3 sessions a month. I thought, well, that would work. Oh, we'll have an intake session. Okay. And then we might have a review. And then there's something at the end. Okay. That's what I took. So I kind of creatively swiped, not plagiarized, but somebody else's proposal. And I just wrote it down. They loved it. And then 5 years later, business coaching became a national thing.
Yeah, and one thing I want to kind of just throw in here as well, which I think people forget is, and I certainly find it in the 3 Principles communities, how helpful other people are.
Yeah.
And I'm sure and I've seen it a couple of times, people have posted online in various Facebook groups, hey guys, I want to deliver a workshop to this organisation, or I want to do this. I'm not quite sure how to do it. This is what I've got so far. Can you give me feedback? And people are incredibly helpful. So
you can do that, because you might see something I post on Facebook. You say, oh, that's an interesting contract, but it's not for me. It's in the wrong geographic area. It's like, still have a look at it, because there's information contained within it. It might be the policy stuff, the legislation stuff behind it, but you go, okay, a lot of organizations are based similar. Okay. So it might give you a name and a job title of the person who's dealing with it, or the department they're in, or how their email is actually structured.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a local authority, they're all .gov.uk.
Yeah.
You know, first name, surname, at whatever it is. Oh, okay. So you can then start to get a flavour of who's the person to contact in my local area.
Right.
But don't go and ring them up or email them to sell.
Yeah.
As you said, people in the public sector are particularly helpful, because that's why they got into the role in the first place. They love to help. They don't like to be sold to, but they like to help. So you can ring them up and say, can I just have 10, 15 minutes of your time? I'm interested. I work in this particular field. Is there anybody you could put me in touch with that might be helpful in this, or give me some pointers of who to contact, or does anybody in the local authority area or the area that you work in provide this, or where it might be useful, or what's the biggest problem you're facing at the moment? That kind of open conversation. I used to get them when I was consultant for local authorities, and even when I worked in local authorities, we would do anything that helped to help people and point them in the direction if we could.
Yeah.
You get some really, really helpful people. So.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. That's something that I hadn't thought of. I was actually talking to other practitioners, but that's a really good point around going back to people, even when there's not a tender, and you can find out in your local area who your key point of contact is, and go and say, well, I'm a coach, or I'm a training provider, or whatever else. I'm looking to deliver these services locally. Is that something you're interested in? Is there anyone there? That sort of thing.
Is there anybody providing this at the moment?
Yeah.
Or is there any organization might be providing this, but I could go and have a chat with to see. I spoke to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they kind of pursued it, and they went to what's kind of like what's called Meet the Buyer. It's like an open day. Yeah. It's like, we're looking to contract these kind of services out. The people who are going to do the contract, the putting it out, come and meet them. Yeah. And she came away with a list of 140 organisations that she could then follow up with and partner up with to say, great. So as a sole practitioner, she can then go to an organisation and say, I can add on to what it is you're already doing.
Yeah.
in this particular area.
So let's go into a little bit more detail, because this is what I'm finding kind of juicy and interesting. So let's say you mentioned children's services. Now, I've never worked in schools or in children's services or anything else. I've got an understanding of the three principles, however deep that is, and I've worked in corporations. Would you say that me not having industry specific knowledge or sector specific knowledge, would that exclude me from work, from tendering for work? Would I be better off finding someone who has worked in that sector? And again, there are lots of people online who may have done, who are in this community, to partner. What's your view on that? Because my view was, before I'd listened to what you guys had recorded yesterday, was almost like, well, I can't really work in that sector because I don't know anything about that sector. They will exclude me if they start asking me about, well, a certain act or a certain piece of legislation or anything, because I'm not familiar with it. I'm a quick study, but because I'm not familiar with it, that would preclude me from bidding for that work. Or is that just a nonsense?
You'd only start to write about that if that came to mind. If you pointed towards it, if you think, oh my God, I don't know the legislations. When you start to write, that will come through. But you're right that sometimes it might be a comfort factor to partner up with somebody who has experience of that area, so you can kind of piggyback on them, as it were. And sometimes actually there are some of the tendering sites. It lists subcontracting opportunities, so it actually says we're bidding for this as an organisation, but we need people to deliver in X, Y, and Z. If you're open to that, come and get in touch with us, because we'll just build you into our proposal. So you don't even have to write the proposal. You can bump into people, find people who are actually pitching for it,
Yeah.
and then you can piggyback into that, so you get some experience. Sometimes it's kind of useful to have like children's services specific experience of, for example, if it's kids with behavioral needs, if you were completely new to it. But you can talk about it in a generic way.
Yeah.
Because coaching is a kind of a generic thing. Some people think it has to be specific. And in some areas it is useful. When I was business coaching, having an understanding of some of the legislation really did help to stop people getting into trouble. That was kind of useful. So, but you pick that up along the way anyway. The interest is just to start writing, or put in proposal together, because if they've got that problem, they're putting it out formally. There are other people would have the same problem, which you can approach probably much more directly. But now you've got a proposal, or it could be, as I said just now, is you can ring them up or email them and say, we have tremendous success in this area. We don't have any experience in working, say, with children, with 14-year-old children with behavioral needs, but we because it's generic, we can bring it across. What do you suggest would be a way forward for us? And they go, okay, you might want to partner up with somebody, or could you tell us more about your organization and the success you've had elsewhere, and how you would bridge that across? For example, when I started ski coaching, I didn't even ski. I coached ski instructors to get through their exams, and I didn't even ski.
Right.
Now, you'd think that would be very specific knowledge you'd have to teach to coach ski instructors, but no. I just saw the director of the ski school in a bar, and I was with a friend, and I said, "Is that so and so?" He said, "Yes, it is." And I just found myself getting up, walking across, and introducing myself to this guy, and we got talking. And he said, "Oh, I'm running a couple of courses for ski instructors. Would you mind coming along? Because I think you've got something very valuable to offer." I kind of brought across my business coaching stuff and applied it in a different area. They all passed their exams, and the trainer came to me a couple of days later. He said, "I don't know what you did to my guys of the first workshop. It was only about an hour and a half." He said, "But we went out on the Wednesday, the day skiing world class, and I didn't ski." but they got something out of what I said. They heard something. So you don't have to have necessarily the sector specific. You can either require it, or you can go, well, actually, this is a generic approach, or we have other people. This is what's happening. So in the principal world, you can draw evidence from other parts of the world, other countries, colleagues people you don't know, and say, well, this is the approach, and we'd just like to do it in your particular area. With yours, we think it will make a big difference.
Okay. And so again, another practical question: where are all these contracts available? So if I'm someone who's sitting at home right now thinking, oh, I'd love to get my action in, on some of these. I'd love to try this out, maybe bid for some work, or even see if there's any work locally. How do you find out? You talk about these coming into your inbox. Where do they come from? How can people get hold of these?
I subscribe to about 25 different websites where they're the kind of portals that groups of local authorities or group of public sector or the NHS, they kind of go on a particular website that manages the contract process, the specification process, and all of that. They're really kind of actually quite user friendly. Some of them are hideous. I avoid those, but some of them are actually the ones the contract talking about. They're kind of very user friendly. They want to encourage people to come forward, so they don't. They want to make it as easy as possible. I have a list of the ones that I subscribe to or don't, and some I don't. My Inside Out Guide to Funding, they're listed all there. So if you want to go and sign up for them, they're all there.
You mentioned that before, so can we just share that with people as well? The Inside Out Guide to Funding.
Yeah, it's stuck in my public Dropbox account, so I can send you a link and you can share it. Or I have a private Facebook group called Heads Up from Headstuff. And the stuff that lands in my inbox, I just post there and say, opportunity for here, looking for, and marketing services. Oh, okay, so if that's or we're looking for trainers in personal development training, or sometimes we are actually looking for coaches for our senior managers. Sometimes they're very specific, sometimes they're a bit more generic. So I post those there. You can sign up. Another way to check it is just go on your local authority website. It's a good starting point. Local authority website. Even ring them up. Ring up procurement to say, how do I get hold of the stuff you put out to tender? And they'll say, it goes through this portal. You have to register with this organisation, and from then you can then just get them mailed through to you, or just go on their website and it'll say the section will be how to do business with us, or contracts or something like that, and it click through. They'll give a bit of information. It says you have to register with this website, and all the stuff will come straight through to you.
Okay.
They're pretty organised, and as I said, they do make it very, very simple.
Okay. No, well, that's good to know. I was wondering if we can, if it's easy, could we look at some live examples? Because again, just taking it out of the realms of possibility, and just if there's one or two examples of something that's out there now, I think that could be quite useful and helpful to people to see. Okay, well, there's this project here or whatever.
I've got one here. It's a consortium in the southeast for 19 Children's Services Authority in the southeast of England. They're looking to do basically a improvement program to improve performance. So it's not actually coaching children; it's coaching the managers to improve performance. So,
and what's the budget for that?
160 annual budget for the program is approximately £160,000 across the 19. The value of work completed by freelance consultants is less than 40,000 in any 1 year. So they're breaking it down to bite-sized chunks.
Okay.
And it says we appoint between 2 and 10 freelance consultants who offer a range of skills that they're looking for. It even suggests day rates that they're looking at. You can play around with that, and then it just says, here's the application form, which has got 3 sections.
So I think this is the one that you posted that I actually had a look at yesterday. So I think it'd be quite helpful if you don't mind, if we could just go through some of that form. and I can maybe pick some things out which might be helpful, because I think some people might go, this is great, see a big form, and then get scared by the form and what they're asking for. So what I can see is that they've got a score, so am I correct that they're literally 5 things that they're going to score you on, which gives you a score of 27?
Yeah, and that's the kind of scoring mechanism is usually contained in every tender document. They say, we're looking for this and we will assess you on the basis of this. So you actually get to see, like, as it were, the examiner, what they're going to examine you on and how the importance of particular areas compared to other areas. So you can actually, and I know people do it, go through and say, well, I've got the score here and it tells me I'll score 1 point for this, 2 point for this level, 3 for this, 4 for 5. And you can go through and score it yourself and say, okay, what can I do to get from a 4 to a 5? What can I get from a 2 to a 3? What difference can I make? How can I change what it is that it's much clearer, or the information that they're looking for is there? So it's pretty opaque.
Okay, so I'm having a look at it right now, and and would you say this is a fairly typical example?
It's funny. The kind of generic information that they're looking for is pretty much the same as it is here. So the first section is your details.
Yeah.
Name, address, telephone number. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Company name, registration. You don't actually have to have a company or even self-employed. That's for a sole trader status number here. Because you can actually pitch for the contract and say, if we do get this, we will set that up.
Right.
So you don't have to have it. I've set up companies on the back of contracts if I've got it. I say, okay, before I start the contract, I will do this. It'll all be compliant. Okay. Or that you require £500,000 of insurance, personal insurance. Cover. I've only got 250,000, but if I got the contract, I'll just increase it to 500,000 and send you a copy of the certificate. Okay, that's fine. That's usually acceptable.
Okay, so one of the things that kind of stood out for me was it was asking for a couple of references from professional colleagues with whom or for whom you have recently worked. So if there are people out here who are kind of very new, who have kind of just starting, and they get asked for referees, what could they do to make sure that they get those in and it's something that's suitable? And do they get checked even, or are they just there on the piece of paper?
They sometimes get checked, but probably after the event. So if you're kind of scored and it's like, actually we're going to award the contract, then they'll actually get round to, like a job application. They might not check everybody's reference, but actually the person who is going to get the job they want to offer it to, they will check the references before they do that. It doesn't have to be in the capacity that you're working at the moment. Right. So if you're a coach, but you actually spent a couple of years whilst doing your coaching training or whatever, doing stuff, and that would then tend to come through how you worked at that organization. Right. So you can actually then go to a reference and say from your previous boss and say, could you give me a reference in this, please? Yeah. And then it doesn't have to be within the past 2 weeks or precisely through the business that you're dealing with at the moment. Yeah. Okay. No, that's fairly helpful. Yeah, you can be pretty creative with it. I've got references from stuff I've done over the years in different capacities. So if somebody wants a reference, I'll just pick and choose the one which seems to be most relevant to that. Okay. So, and then they've just kind of got like a few questions, which I guess are the crux of this tender document, which is kind of demonstrate that you're suitably qualified to work in this area. Yep. Again, could you kind of highlight some things that you think that they would be looking for, or that a 3 principles practitioner could put into that? Again, they're limiting it to 200 words, so without giving us kind of say these exact things, could you kind of give us some bullets or highlights in terms of what are they looking for there? That they're looking for a bit of a how-to. It's like, how do you operate? I think I said earlier, it's like write in the present tense. 200 words is a short word count, but it's not unusual. The funniest thing is you can get some of the bigger applications. Most of it is the due diligence stuff, which is checks, policies, that kind of stuff, references. The actual bit is, what are you proposing to do? Is about the least. It's about the smallest part of the application form. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've discovered is the smaller amounts of money, the bigger the forms. I didn't pitch for one thing for about a £5,000 pot of money because the form was 26 or 30 pages long.
Right.
It's like, it's not worth the amount of effort to do that.
Yeah.
Where I have pitched 350,000 on a 6-page application form.
Yeah.
So it's bizarre.
Yeah.
So suitably qualified for somebody principled. Okay, the word qualified. Okay, what training have you done?
Right.
And that might be, okay, 3 principles. You don't have, because there's no certified programs in formally 3 principle training. So you can allude to other stuff, like if you've got an MBA or even counseling, hypnotherapy, NLP, all that kind of other stuff.
Yeah.
You might not use it, but stick it down.
Yeah. I think Jamie's course ends up in a certification.
Yeah.
The one that he currently does, and I'm just wondering if, again, you could just say,
sorry, I mean accredited.
Accredited certification.
Kind of accredited to a kind of an independent body. That kind
right.
Of thing.
Okay.
So, for example, a certified hypnotherapist would be is it Council for Hypnotherapy? I'm not familiar with it. Or if you have an MBA, it would be accredited by AMBA or whoever that one of the accreditation organisations are. That kind of formal type qualification. So, for example, I've got NLP Master Prac. I would probably stick that in there.
Right.
My MBA specialises in creativity and innovation. I would stick that in there.
Right.
It might be because you're looking at managers and people and supervisors who you'd be coaching. Just pull out some experience of actually where you've coached managers or supervisors, people who make decisions, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, if you give some, and again, because you've got 200 words, use bullet points.
Okay.
Bullet points have you can drop words out of it very, very easily. People get the gist of it without having to make it into a sentence. The other thing is bullet points make it sound authoritative, as if you know what you're talking about, rather than narrative. People just ramble on in narrative, but just go, I've got this, this, this. Here's an example of this. This is where I coached three managers going through an organizational change, and this is what they reported. If you can stick in some quotes, testimonials, stick them in italics. What I've sometimes done is like put links to further information. If you want to know more about this, here's what you can do. Here's a link. You can stick embedded links into it. Trade secrets. Diagrams don't count as a word count. They sometimes might be useful to stick it. This is the process of how I work. You can stick in a diagram there. It doesn't count as part of the word count. I love to models, and I've got principle-based models, and it kind of in a diagram that says this is how we operate. So it's like, I can share this with you. I can put this into this document, and the next, okay, I can see that kind of. It could be, I think previously, if you use something like the GROW model, you go, okay, this is how the GROW model works. Okay, that's great.
Okay, no, that's helpful.
So sometimes you're actually educating the person who is assessing it, because they might. I've seen tenders, and they've said coaching. They've defined coaching as such and such. I went, that's not true. Okay, so there's a bit of education required here, because you actually don't have an idea of what coaching is. Fair enough. It does happen. but also I've seen stuff that it's clear the person putting out might have talk about your, for example, social enterprise. Okay, there isn't any definition of social enterprise. It's not a legal thing, but somebody in a local authority, because they don't run a business, wouldn't necessarily know that. They'll have heard the phrase social enterprise and think it's a kind of legal structure, but no, it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
So you've got an opportunity to educate the person assessing it, and after you've given them a little bit of information that they now know, they can apply that to assess more critically other people's applications.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. It does. So what I'm kind of hearing is, you can, and I'm assuming this will be with the 3 principles especially, is, put things in which, number one, will be different, and you can do it as a diagram and educate the person to say, well, this is how we work. You talked about kind of links to other things. One thing I wanted to kind of tease out was, I know there are lots and lots of people who apparently right now are coordinating evidence around the 3 principles and 3 principles approach.
Yep.
What have you used? Who would be good? So I think Chantal did stuff for her new book. I believe Linda Ramus was, and I might have made that up, was doing things in the US. What have you used for kind of evidence to kind of support anything that was a kind of a principle based, or help other people do that?
The best stuff is, I think, Robin Charbit.
Insight and Principles.
Yeah, he wrote some stuff a while back which kind of relates to business, and this kind of some nice hard numbers in there about 35% year-on-year profit improvements, reduced staff turnover, which actually cost this company $40,000 a year to replace every member of staff, and some of the changes, kind of like nice numbers.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff I've seen is quite old, like 20 years old or 15 years old.
Right.
And it's a little difficult sometimes to bring that up to date. If it's around community or social stuff, then the Centre for Sustainable Change, CSC, over in the UK, over in the US, has got some more recent stuff, which is publicly available on their website. So you can, if it's kind of community changes, they list about reduction in truancy levels, educational performance going up, that kind of thing. And there's some nice numbers in there. At this level that we're talking about, because this, I'm trying not to sound too technical, there's basically 5 levels of proof. The top level would be the big double-blind studies that they do in medical type stuff. Not at this level. Quotes are great. So make it live, make it personal, make it real. So quotes and testimonials, or just phrases, which are really good. So if you've had a client who said that was the most impactful thing I've ever experienced, stick it in there.
Right.
Make it, you want to build a kind of connection with the person you're talking to. So if you make it a bit clinical, that's not much of a relationship you build. But you've got to do it in kind of written form. I tend to use kind of slightly chatty language.
Right.
I've even used phrase like, we would love to make this happen. You don't use, traditionally, you don't use the word love in a anonymous application form. But it kind of projects your humanity across.
It gives you a personality.
Exactly that. You're trying to put your personality across. So be yourself rather than who the person you think you should be.
So I want to kind of wrap this up in a bit, because I know we've been talking for nearly an hour. But so one final thing is, so one of the questions here is familiar with the current context for delivering local authority children's services. Now, for me, for example, I'd have no idea. But is that something that we talked about earlier, where you could just ring up the person, or ring up a different local authority and just say, what's the current context? What's going on in children's services at the moment? Because I want to deliver services into this area, but I don't know much about it. Or could you point me in the direction of someone? Is that just a legitimate way of doing that?
Absolutely. And if you go back to the specification on page, on the second paragraph, it says full details of the program and its activities are at, and they give their own website.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff there.
You can go and research on there. and there's usually stuff in that provides the context within the specification. I mean, the one we're looking at only 6 pages long.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. And it contains all information including the application form. And sometimes there will be keywords or key documents, or say based on this particular. So under the Care Act 2014, we have to do this. As I said, well-being is now a statutory responsibility of local. Oh, okay. So you could then just Google overview of Care Act, overview of well-being within Care Act. There's a couple of local authorities around the country at the moment who are actually putting on one-day workshops for suppliers to say, this is what's coming up for us. We have to deal with this. Can you come forward and advise us on the best way to deal with it? Yeah. So if you turn up, you can sit there and say, yeah, that approach would give you some okay results, but if you did this differently, you'd actually get much better results. And then you can stand up and go, or make even paper submissions, because there's some around at the moment say what they call a market consultation. Go, we're about to put stuff out to tender. We're looking to innovative approaches. Can you let us know of these? Because they won't know everything that's around, and it's your opportunity to then educate them and say, yeah, this is a really good way. If you want some exceptional results, this is what you'll be getting here if you do this. So there's opportunities to influence that, and because it came from you, you then start to build a relationship with that organisation and the people within it. Yeah,
and stand out, no doubt.
Well, I mentioned earlier about there was somebody came to me and there was a tender specification to do with police and basically crime reduction and the what do you call it? Not the appearance, perception of crime. It's a funny statistic. Crime rates go down, perception of crime rates go up.
Right.
So people's perception, it's a real big frustration for the police. They go like, we have all of this stuff, crime rate is going down, but people's perception of crime is going up and up and up. So it's the perceptual stuff, and we work in the perceptual field. But within this tender was they set out their policy, their strategic policy over the next 5 years that say, actually, what we want to do is evidence-based policing. So we have to test out 3 to 5 new initiatives every year. And it's like, oh, that's great. And then they have the Police and Crime Commission Fund, which is usually several £1 million in each area, each police area, and they'll pay for that kind of stuff. So it was a case of there's money available for good ideas, and well, this is a good idea to do with the perception of crime, and a principle-based approach would be fantastic with that. And then you actually got access. The information was, we actually have a program where we have to test these things out. So they have to have them turning up to test out. So if you go, I want £20,000 from the Police and Crime Commission Fund to run these workshops about perception of crime, we monitor the results. And monitoring your own stuff is absolutely key, because that gives you the access to the next project. That is your own evidence base. That's your own track record. I always do that. Every single project I've done, so I can, at the end of it, I go, this is the difference that
you've made,
we've made.
Fantastic.
So from getting business startup rates from 1 out of 10 to 6 out of 10, it's evidence based. Okay. Improvements of even ski performance. I keep track record of that. What's the rate of improvement? Oh, it's about 400%. I can help you learn to ski within 3 days instead of taking 3 weeks. It's kind of that, and just keep a track of it, because then that's your own evidence, which is much more powerful than taking somebody else's evidence. But taking somebody else's evidence is a useful starting point.
It's better than no evidence.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, we've really run out of time, so thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you, if they want to know more, I'm going to post... if you can send me the link to the Inside Out Guide to Funding, I'm going to post that up online, and I'll send the link to the document we've been discussing as well. And I can also post a link, or you can share the link of the webinar you did with Dave Kibbe, so they've got all that. But if people want more, How can they do
best
that?
thing is get in touch. My email address is anthony@headstuff.eu. Bear in mind, I live in France, so I'm in a slightly different time zone to the UK, just an hour's difference. Best thing on Skype. My Skype name is Headstuffski.
Okay, fantastic.
Contact me. We'll set something up and have a conversation.
Brilliant. And as usual, if anyone wants my expertise or lack of expertise, they can. I'll be posting up online, so just send me a message on Facebook. So thank you very much, Anthony. That was incredibly helpful.
Thank you.
I'm sure people will get value from it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers, Kush.